Recording in progress.
Good evening and welcome to the February 4th meeting of the Historic District Commission. We have a full board here tonight, a full commission, but we have a very short agenda, which is good. So to my far right is our alternate Larry Booz.
Hi, good evening.
We have Dr. Dan Brown.
Good evening.
Martin Ryan.
Good evening.
Vice Chair Margot Doring.
Hello.
I'm Chair Reagan Rudig. And then we have Isaac Gilbo from the Planning Department.
Good evening.
Our new City Council representative, Kate Cook.
Good evening.
Mr. David Adams.
Good evening.
And Joy Kurth.
Good evening.
Actually, we are missing Susan Strauss, our other alternate, but maybe she'll come in later. I haven't heard anything. All right, so the board's action in these matters has been deemed to be quasi-judicial in nature. If any person believes any member of the board has a conflict of interest, that issue should be raised at this point or it will be deemed waived. All right. Before we get started into our agenda items, we have a lot of postponements. So we have two, I'm going to read them all out, although some of them, I think at least one might be old enough that we denied the request to postpone.
Yeah, both A and B.
Both A and B. Okay, so the old business public hearings, A is the public hearing requested by Capital Security Financial Services, owner for property located at 40 Market Street. This is about replacing the doors. And B is the public hearing requested by Peter and Morgan Caraviello, owners for property located at 366 Islington Street. This is also about historic door replacement. These have been postponed many times. It seems like maybe the applicants have come up with a solution, so they don't need to come back. And if they do, they can reapply, make a new application. So do I have, I'm looking for a motion
So moved.
to deny the postponement of these, if that is,
Both of them, or? I'm
Yes.
sorry. Okay, yep,
that is the.
so moved.
Okay. We
I'll
need a
second that.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, any opposed? Chair votes aye. And we also have a request to withdraw, which is work session Old Business A, work session requested by Zucchini Crayon Trust, owner for property located at 77 State Street, Unit 202, wherein permission is requested to allow new construction to an existing structure. And then a request to postpone a work session requested by Christopher W. Avery Revocable Trust, owner for property located at 30 Walden Street. So if I could get a motion to approve both of those requests.
I'll make a motion to approve the request to withdraw and the request to postpone.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, chair votes aye. Okay. So tonight we have just a nice sampling of all of our different items here. So we have, first of all, we want to do the approval of minutes, but then we have one administrative approval, one public hearing, and one work session. So let's go with the approval of minutes. Are there any notes or comments to the minutes? I just have one at the very last page. You just left the G off of my last name. So that's it.
That can be fixed easily.
Okay. Good. All right. Any other? There are no other comments. I'll take a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
I'll abstain on this vote.
Okay. Thank you.
I have to abstain too, I wasn't here.
That's right. Okay.
I'll second the motion that Martin made.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Two abstains. Any opposed? Chair votes aye. All right, great. We will move on. All right, to our one administrative approval, and I'll let Isaac take over.
All right. So we have one item tonight for administrative approvals. It is 111 Gates Street. This item was before us for a public hearing and then a few subsequent administrative approvals. They are here tonight for a change to the previously approved window series. And I do have the applicant here who can maybe just very quickly just run over those quick changes and then maybe answer any questions that the commission has.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Amy Dutton. I'm representing Zach Dombrowski and Megan Black. I think Dave took a look at the windows that we had previously approved, which were Marvin Elevate. And while they look great in sort of newer historic houses, because of the trim detail, it didn't look authentic enough. So we went back, we researched Marvin, not Signature anymore, Essential Elevate, Ultimate. That would work, but what we were really looking for was this window, which is gelled wen, and it will sit the way that we need it to on that exterior trim, which is very, very unique to that house and to many of the houses on Gates Street. So I think Dave was the one who saw the original window installed, and the homeowner was horrified when he saw it. And so that's what made us go back to the drawing board and make this more historic, at the expense of the homeowner is the one who wants to do this. So it's nice to have a homeowner who is fully on board of making something more historic. So just so you understand the placement, it will be the entire front facade, the two windows on the playroom, which is the driveway down side, and then the window above that, and then the windows on, maybe just scooch down a little bit. Yep. So then you're seeing, those are the two on the first floor, and then the one above closest to the street. And then on the opposite side, here, so that's the living room, there's a hallway, and then that's the primary bedroom above that. So anything that can really be seen by the road. And then the Marvin Elevate that were previously approved will go on the rest of the house.
Right? Any questions?
We're also talking about the two windows in the, is that the window conversation, that's the replacement window conversation? Are we also putting two windows in the gable ends?
Yes, that was approved in the last time we were back, which I think was
Okay.
December.
All right, thank you very much.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. This is very good to know for us too.
Yeah.
To
know
which
which-
products actually work better than others. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, I think the Marvin Ultimate was very, very close, but it was just the specific way that this window lands on the sill is we actually needed no sill, essentially, so.
Okay.
So just for clarity, it's on page 16
I'm sorry?
in our PDF, I guess I'm just trying to be
Yes.
clear of what we're,
Yes, in our
Sound,
PDF
yeah.
packet, it's the information on the left side of page 16.
okay, got it.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right, so that was our one and only administrative approval, 111 Gate Street. And does anyone have any stipulations or?
Other than just making sure that we're still in half screens.
All right.
All right, thanks. Oh,
Like to move approval?
thank you.
Second?
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair votes aye. Thank you. Thanks. All right. Now we're on to our new business public hearing. It is a work session public hearing requested by 304 Maplewood Avenue LLC, owner, for property located at 304 Maplewood Avenue, wherein permission is requested to allow new construction to an existing structure, construct a new rear one-story addition as per plans on file in the planning department. Said property is shown on Assessor Map 140 as Lot 7 and lies within the Character District 4L2 and Historic Districts. So, welcome.
Good evening. Mark Janay with Portsmouth Architects, here representing the applicant. This is I guess, a work session / public hearing, so
Would you like us to sit, or do you want to just,
it doesn't matter to me. I'm happy to do either.
all right, we'll stay here.
We'll run through the presentation from here, and then I'm happy to answer any questions. So as mentioned, the applicant is looking to provide or they've proposed a 1,000 square foot addition off the rear of the building. Just real quick before we leave the first page here, you can see it appears that, from the 1940s to whenever it was last renovated, it was a convenience store, maybe a gas station, kind of a rectilinear appearance. And at some point, before our applicant owned the property, it was converted to have more of a residential feel with some of the hipped and gabled end roofs added to it. Moving on, the next page is just the existing site plan conditions. If you've been to the property, you've noticed that a lot of the front is asphalt, which provides the necessary parking for the building that's currently there. There's, on the left and the bottom of the page, are lawn areas that have wood fences kind of screening it from the abutters. The next sheet, A1, shows the proposed site plan. So this shows the location of the addition. This is basically being built off of the rear of the existing structure. It's matching the width of the structure that's there now and coming out. I can't remember exactly, but we'll see it when we get to the floor plan. Existing contextual photos. The middle to upper photo there is the rear where the addition would be attached. There's a current shed addition, which is just storage, cold storage at the moment. That would be removed, and then we'd be building off from that point on to the back. So here you can see the proposed addition. So it's, I can't read it, but 35 feet or so.
35 feet 3 inches.
Thank you. And then 28 feet 8 inches approximately for the width. This is providing 4 additional office spaces to the building. The building is currently used as office space. There's approximately 3 offices on the first floor and kind of a lounge space when you first enter. So this will provide additional space for office use. We're stepping down the roof, maintaining the existing kind of hip form that is on the building, but then stepping it down so that it's less important than the existing building. We have similar window styles. They're double hung windows. We're proposing fiberglass clad, which would match the similar to what's there now. Spacing them apart as we get down to the elevations on the next sheet. You'll see that the existing windows are 2 double hungs that are basically paired together. We're separating them a little bit more, but so that the siding can continue between them, but they're the approximate size and style of what's there now. Again, the hipped roof, we're matching existing slopes and everything. Materials in the exterior of the building. Yeah, you can go down. Materials would be matching what's there now. It's currently wood clapboards with a 4-inch exposure, so we'd be matching that and same with asphalt shingles on the roof. K-style aluminum gutters to match what's there. And then we're proposing the Marvin Elevate or similar windows to have the same profiles to what's there now in the building. And that's the end of the packet.
Well, we're technically in work session mode, so if anybody has questions or any comments, discussion.
So this is effectively invisible from the street because it's off the back of the property.
That's the hope, yep.
Do you know from the from the water you would see it closer to the water because it would be another?
It would be fairly, I don't think it would be very visible. There are abutters behind this property.
Okay.
So it should be fairly screened from the water. It's from the road.
This is a Purely technical, not technical, aesthetic question. I drive past this building quite often, and the parking area makes it look very industrial, bare-ish, as opposed to the residential feel that they tried to add to this building to make it fit into the neighborhood. Is there any thought to soften or somehow change the front? I understand that you need it for parking, but any thoughts on that?
At the moment, no, they're really just focused on this kind of addition in the rear.
Okay.
But we'll certainly pass that on to the applicant.
Thank you.
Any other comments or suggestions? I mean, this is pretty straightforward addition on a building that's not necessarily historic, or it doesn't present its historic self, so.
Right.
I mean, we can open it up to the public if there's anyone from the public who would like to speak to the work session component. Anyone here? I will close then the work session part and reopen it up to just a quick public hearing, so you don't have to redo the whole thing, just
Yep.
summarize.
So we're here representing the applicant who's looking to provide a 1,000 square foot addition on the rear of the existing structure, matching finishes and materials to what's existing.
All right, great. Are there any questions? Yes, Larry.
The two different roof heights, had you thought about making them the same height? Because then the precipice of your hip angles would match up.
We did, but we thought, even though it's not very historic of a structure, that since this is just a single-story addition, there is a minimal amount of second-story space
Right.
that does exist. And then since this was in the rear, we thought we'd step it down. But
You know, I was just curious. It's not a deal breaker. Just curious.
Any other questions? Yes.
Will the project require any additional utilities added to the building for heating, cooling, that will be visible?
I guess there is the chance that we would need an additional condenser or something for air conditioning, but right now there's condensers that show up right there that are basically screened behind a fence section. But yes, that's certainly a possibility.
Any other questions? All right. Open it up to the public for our public hearing. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak to this application? Anyone online? All right. Seeing no one rise, I'm going to close the public hearing and wait for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve this application as presented.
I'll second that.
Can you give us a
Well,
purpose and intent?
it doesn't detract from the special character of the district. And it is compatible with design and surrounding properties. Basically, this is a fairly contemporary building that's been altered multiple times, and the addition is fairly benign, and it's very acceptable.
Any other comments? Great. All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair votes aye. Thank you very much. All right. Easy. All right, and then our last item of business is our work session requested by Christopher H. Daniel, owner for property located at 50 Wooden Street, wherein permission is requested to allow new construction to an existing structure, construct a new rear multi-story addition, as per plans on file in the Planning Department. Said property is shown on Assessor Map 102 as Lot 66 and lies within the General Residence B and Historic Districts. So since this is a work session, we can all go down to the table and you can sit with us so that we can have a slightly more casual conversation rather than the formal public hearing. We're just here for a discussion at this point. All right, so please introduce yourselves and present what you have.
I'm Chris Daniel, I'm the owner. This is Scott.
Nice to meet you.
I've known him for 50 years, and we've been roommates in college. Still got it going here. He comes down from Portland, Maine.
Excellent. All right, well, so, yes, present to us what you've got, what your ideas are for your house.
Okay. Well, I think everybody saw this package, right?
Yep.
So the history of this house is pretty loose. Like this part of the house, the first floor and the stone foundation on the lower floor was built originally in 1780, but it wasn't built here. It was moved to here. Nobody knows when it was. The second floor was added, which the first floor and the lower floor have a mass timber frame. So you can see the columns, you know, big 8x8 columns in the corners and then beams. And, you know, downstairs when you look up at the ceiling, they're logs. You know, they're logs and they're about 32 inches on center. And then they're just pine boards used for the flooring. So it's really, that part of the house is really old. Above it, it doesn't have a timber frame. It's a stick frame. So there are no columns, but there's a big chimney that goes through the middle, which downstairs is like 6 feet by 6 feet square. And then as it goes up, it gets smaller and smaller until it's just the chimney coming out the roof. So that looks like that was also added onto the stonework on the second floor, on the bedroom floor. Or not the stonework, but the brickwork looks different than it does down in the basement. So different, you know, it's the same color brick, but it's a harder brick. It's very flaky, you know, it's flaky downstairs, so it's quite old. And all the windows have been replaced on every elevation. They're different pattern. So the windows on the front are 6/6, and then the windows on the back are 6x6, but they're squarish here on this side. They're more vertical. There's an 8/8 here, 6/6 on the top. Doors look like they were added more recently. Those are more modern type sliders. These are all aluminum clad wood windows now. That's what's on all throughout the house. And that's what we're proposing for the proposed addition. So what we want to do is, in this corner, just add a room on each floor on top of the existing one-story addition in the back. And so what we've, let me just keep going. I included sort of the existing conditions just so you could see all the way up from the basement. There's this big stone mass. And isn't it interesting to look at hand drawings again? I would say every house that Frank Lloyd Wright ever designed was drawn by hand. It's not all bad. So this addition off the back is even more recent than the second floor addition, we think. You could see on the existing condition, you could see the timbers in the corner and through the center. So there's sort of 1, 2, 3, 4 rows of beams and columns going this way, and then the secondary structure runs between them like that. Here, this is all stick framed in the back. There's a little bathroom, a kitchen, and the goal is for them to just build out from the kitchen out over the room downstairs, and the same thing on the third floor, or the second floor, I guess it's the second floor from the street. This is the bedroom, and they want to basically build out this area right here, right over the top of the extension of the kitchen. So I think the easiest way to see it is in the drawing of the existing condition. You can see this is the kitchen. It's set back 8 feet from this. This is all the same surface. Here, the same siding goes down and around. And then this is set back 8 feet. We're going to basically fill in right there, just sort of the exact same foundation, same footprint. We did a series of studies, which I included, you know, just so you could see how we got to our solution. And I think one of the driving ideas about us was to make it harmonious and compatible, but to be clearly different. Since this is the original, you know, this is the original house here, and this is quite a bit older. That's the distinctive, the front, when you look at it from the front, that's the distinctive on Wooden Street. It looks like a historic district, right? It starts to not look like a historic district as you come around the corner. So how can we sort of make a distinctly new addition that is harmonious and compatible without being like too crazy or anything like that? So these windows, and again, this is our 2A option. This is the one that we went with, yes. So this
Revision.
so these windows are actually the exact same size. And this siding is the exact same siding that would be, that is on the existing house. It's almost 3 inches, the exposure of the clapboards. So we would carry that forward, and then just at the corner. So when you look out the Wooden Street house, you're looking right at this building. Right, it's literally right across the pond.
Could have brought binoculars if we do doing this during the daytime. You can just peer out the window and see what he's talking about.
Yeah. So what they wanted to do was really to sort of focus their view a little bit more to the east, towards where the pond goes out and around like that. So we sort of just favored the windows to the corner like that. And these, again, are the same proportion. These are sliding doors down below. And then as you come around the corner, so you can see this change in material where it goes from the green clapboards to a mahogany-like material, a natural wood material. Just really is the one thing that sort of calls it out as being different than the original house. But everything is, we've tried to distinctly draw the line between the old and the new, so keeping the corner boards and things like that, so that you can clearly tell where the original house was and where the new addition is there. Same thing on this side. These are the same windows proportionally. These are proportional as well. These are fixed windows there on that side. So, go ahead. And these are just, these are just another set of those existing conditions. No, I'm sorry, these are the floor plans showing exactly what, these are dimensioned to the thing. The other little piece is they would like to have a small deck just projecting out from the, like that, projecting out 4 feet from the kitchen, just so they could just step outside. That's towards the water, but it's cantilevered out with this floor system. It's just cantilevered out from there. There's nothing that touches the ground.
And this is the one, I think it was 6 and we shortened it to 4, so it would be, wouldn't come out, so it's sort of a European style, have a cafe table, but not a banquet feast out there at all, but sort of just small chairs.
I think it shows 4 feet,
Yeah, that's
There
your,
it is. So, that's it.
Okay, great. Are there any initial thoughts or comments to start us off?
I will say that I think this is very thoughtful, and I guess a lot of it depends on, and what is, are you saying that the original house is not so pure and historic as we might think from the surface?
Can't really, no one can tell this exactly when the second floor was put on there. It looks, the way it was blended together, the windows line up and everything, and it's a traditional gable roof like that, so.
So a lot of the framings inside is missing, and
The framing definitely is the difference between the first floor and the second floor.
so it's all
So
stick
the
frames.
first floor
Sounds like it was a cape with a second floor built on top.
it was, I'm not even sure, we had a builder who came down and did some work many years ago, and he saw pieces in there, he said it looked like came out of a barn, that they weren't really made for houses, and he was sort of theorizing that there may have been a repository for old house pieces, and that somebody went out and picked out pieces, and so, like Scott was saying, the windows are, some are 6 over 6, some are 8 over 8, Some of them aren't even insulated, just held in place with a nail holding an old single pane window in place. And there's brick, there's stone, and there's bedrock, so it really looks like it was pieced together over time. And as Scott was saying, on the addition that was done, hard to know. Our neighbor, and he's probably in his 50s, recalls he was a child and saw them doing it, so that would put it back probably to the 70s or 80s, I think, that they, but again, that's no truth, it's just one person's story.
So there's a lot that happens in the back of the house, unlike the front of the house. Very transparent for an addition for construction on this home. I'd be interested, I could support this. I'd be interested to see how the rest of the board feels about this approach, especially the natural wood and all that. It kind of, it's a statement.
Subtle.
It's not a huge, bold.
It's not metal.
Yeah, but it's a bit of a statement for the existing house. Thank you.
I guess I'm used to things getting more like themselves over time. I'm not going to get into the histories. It seems like what you're requesting is to deviate from how things have been for the last couple hundred years. And as a historian, I think that that is a deviation that the district shouldn't have. I think that the evening out of things in the district is an important thing, to replicate forms and features and to demonstrate them slightly differently, but over and over again. We had an application in where just before you saw, where someone with a mercantile building putting an addition on it, but still wanted that addition to follow a pattern that we've long entrenched in our community of having the dependencies be somewhat smaller or somewhat reduced or diminished in some manner. So he built an addition on a modern thing that did not require any historic treatment, but still wanted to feature that big house, little house sort of theme. That's a way that we've been doing things here for a long time. And so your massing of windows is different than our traditional 18th and 19th century and our traditional, even early 20th century solutions to the problems. We rarely saw people filling walls with glass on buildings, except for public buildings where there were no other good solutions. But not only are you massing the windows together, but you're massing them together in an unbalanced sort of way, which is a feature of Georgian architecture, which this certainly looks like in some manner, with the balance, the symmetry of the door in the center, the chimney in the center, the windows balanced on either side. It's a Georgian thing. Designs were done from the exterior and weren't done for the layouts of rooms inside, unlike today. But this is a historic district where we don't do things in the most modern and cutting edge just because that's how we do things today. We're doing things to allow for modern uses, but to have 18th and 19th century solutions to those that still allow them to be viable. One of the other things that I see here is the siding on the building changing part way and I have to say, to me, no apparent reason, which isn't a common thing where most houses have a kind of siding and it's repeated on all sides. Sometimes there's a back of house siding, but it's also a uniform surface, not a piece here and a piece there. There's also an issue of massing the windows in an asymmetric manner and then running them all the way to a corner. In the 18th and 19th century framing traditions, there were braces in corners of buildings, and so therefore almost all of our windows are set in from the gable ends and from the hall posts to allow for that diagonal brace, which was a structural element in the day before plywood, and you know that. So I see a whole series of deviations from what we consider the normal kinds of changes to our buildings, and so I've got some issues.
Ms. Larry?
I'm gonna, I think, go the route that Dave just said here. I think your addition is nice in and of itself. It looks like a lake house, which is not a bad thing. I wish I had a lake house, but I don't. But anyway, when you tack that nice-looking addition on its own onto a colonial house, I think Dave kind of hit the nail on the head. And when I look at this, the thing that troubled me a little bit was the various window styles. And you said earlier, if I'm quoting you as good as I could, you said there were some panes that were held in with nails. So, I mean, I would ask the question, and I know you can't answer this now, but I would say, you know, think about down the road, are you going to do replacement windows or new installation windows on the body of the house? If so, what window style do you want? Because these are probably not original windows. And perhaps all the windows, in alignment with what Dave said, perhaps they should all agree with one another. And when I look at this portion, I start coughing, forgive me, but if I look at this portion, like when he said the window goes right to the corner, I agree with him on that. And if there was like perhaps two up here that were kind of like the same size as this, I think that would work. I know you want a balcony here. Let's say you're approved for a little landing, okay? Let's say you are. If that little landing, instead of all this massive lights, was matched these sliders. You said these are sliders.
Yeah, they're bigger than
Right.
what's proposed.
But at
There's
least if
more
they
wood.
matched it in style, I think that would be more harmonious. And then this window, I know it's existing and you're not talking about it, but if you're cleaning up the design, you could perhaps even do something with this bay type window here, which is also repeated around the corner.
Yeah,
And
it's
I-
not, yeah, it's not
And I
a-
think if you look at doing those things, you've kind of addressed the issues that, you know, Dave has raised. Like I said, so to summarize, I think your addition is tasteful, but I don't necessarily think it blends with the house. So that's my 2 cents, but anyway.
Yeah, looking at the neighborhood where a lot of the houses were built in the last 50 years, every one of them is different. So to be purity, when the house next to us was built as a duplex to take care of 2 elderly aunts and has nothing interesting architecturally. The one across the way has double hung windows that they spent months having to putty and fill, and they're just not insulated well. So in a world where we're trying to bring light and some passive solar into the house to cut back, I understand all the points of view, but I've seen some things done that really are counterproductive to what we're trying to achieve. We're not putting solar panels in the historic district, but we also want the light to come in. And Scott's built a house for us in Hopkinton, and it worked wonderfully with lots of windows that came in and provided great insulation, and it made a huge difference. And I say now, down in the basement, they're so poorly fit that you have to nail the windows shut. That doesn't do much for healthy indoor living when you're living on bedrock, and we've all heard about radon and the kind of things that come from bedrock. So yeah, maybe it's good because it's drafty now, but I don't want to keep it as drafty it is now.
I think these are really good points, and I fully expect it to have, this is good dialogue. There's also the Department of Interior guidelines for historic preservation, which say not to copy, which direct you specifically not to copy and make it look like the old house. So there's the tension right there. Is it like how much do you make it similar, and how much can you make it distinctly different, which is kind of what I was trying to explain at the beginning. So we're making the windows the same size, as the same material, not the same divided lights, but the same proportion of divided lights. They're actually proportionally identical to the existing divided lights. So I don't know, it's like we don't need to brace it in the corner because we do it differently nowadays. So, so should I move the windows away from the corner because 200 years ago, they were braced in the corner, but they're not today. It's just the wall is going to be 8 inches thick. It's not going to be 4 inches thick. It's going to have 2 inches of rigid on the outside and 6 inches of cavity insulation. It's going to be different in so many ways. And so that's I think, part of the dilemma, is that how do we make it distinctly different, but make it harmonious, not the same? So we really shouldn't, the difference between 1800 and 1900, you're a historian, you can probably tell when they were built, right?
I would,
And
to
you
the
can
month
tell-
usually,
Yeah, and you can tell from you should see the size of the framing in there. It's exactly 2 inches, a full 2 inches by a full 8 inches. Rust on and everything, you can tell exactly when, before what date that was cut. So, but today we use LVLs, we use like high-performance materials and things like that. I'm not gonna use 2x8s, dimensional 2x8s to frame it, because that wouldn't make sense. So there's so many ways in which the new addition will be different, just in the way it has to be made and insulated, and the type of windows, and, these are the difference. They're the same size, and they're gonna have the same matching color cladding and all of that, and the same, simulated divided light. Those dimensions will match almost exactly, but they're actually brand-new windows, and, they're gonna look a little bit different until they weather in. This, I can understand the conversation about this. We've done this on a lot of houses, and it's just a way of showing that it's not old. That could easily be green clapboards, or it could be this weather's too gray. This weather's to a silver gray, like a shingle, like a Cape Cod shingle color. So that's, we consider lots of things like that. I mean, we did, like I said, we did several different iterations of this to try and find the combination. We put windows on the outside, we put windows on the inside, like that. And this was the combination that really worked the best for the owner and for what they were trying to accomplish.
Thank you. Yeah, no, this is all a very good conversation, and strikes at what we often, struggle with here. So much noise. But yes, so it's just, and we all have different perspectives on this and trying to figure it out. So we're all here to kind of discuss and figure out the best way forward. I'll let Margot go ahead.
So, I agree with your statement about the Department of Interior Standards and not trying to make something that's new completely old. But when I look at the back of the house, there's a lot going on because of these older changes and additions. And you have, 2 modern bay windows with no divided lights. You have small windows, big windows, and then you have this new structure that has a completely different rhythm of windows and placement. And so the back, although it is the back of the house, starts to look pretty jumbled. And the end that faces the mill pond has a little bit of that problem too, not quite as much. So I'm wondering if there's an opportunity when you're doing this addition to perhaps harmonize some of those other elements that were put in without regard to some of these aesthetic issues that might make the homes look a little bit better. Minor changes, changing out the windows perhaps, might just sort of clean up how the whole back looks. I'm torn with regard to the placement of the windows in the modern addition. I'm a fan of mid-century modern. I love it when the windows come to the corner. What it does to the inside of a building makes it light and airy and really, really beautiful. So in another circumstance, I would support this. but I'm having a hard time with it in this situation. But then, on the other hand, I was trying to imagine in my head, is it possible that it's actually not, that it's going all the way to the corner that's bothering me, but the whole thing is offset? And you have this strip of no windows on the left-hand side that's just sort of hanging out there. How would I feel if I saw this with the windows going all the way across the addition? Literally from corner to corner. Would certainly be modern looking, would give Dave heartburn, but I'm wondering if the symmetry and the balance that would give to this would match better with the Georgian symmetry that Dave was talking about.
Yeah.
And therefore, while you would have something that's clearly modern, it wouldn't disrupt as badly the symmetry that is intrinsic in the Georgian design. So I don't know what it would look like, but I'm just throwing out my reactions of just feeling that this is off balance with the rest of the building.
Good point. We drew
Yeah.
it. We drew it with 4,
Yeah,
with 2,
exactly.
with 3. Yeah,
It
so.
it was good. The four was very good. There's no question. And if that was the real concern, I'd have no objections to putting forth.
So that was one of the options you looked at?
Yeah.
I feel like that is a common modern addition type thing on a historic house, is just to basically make a glass wall to show that it is an addition, to show that it's modern, but still uses a traditional material, which is a double hung window, or whatever kind of window it is, but glass. So that would be an interesting thing to see. Did you have something to say?
Looking at that backyard, I can understand why you went, it's a great area, a great view, and I can understand why you want all those windows, but I have to agree that there's a imbalance there between everything you see in the backyard, and that maybe balancing those 3 windows in between, I think would fit a little better. I'm not sure about going 4 windows wide. I'd have to see that, but
You mean like just put them in the middle instead of on the corner?
yeah, you got the dead square coming down, and then the southern, suddenly all the glass and modern, and then I think it throws off any balance there is on that on the back building.
And I do think that the change of material just highlights that a little bit more, so it draws your eye.
Yeah, the colors, yep.
Perhaps the next time coloring the rest of the green clabbered in on the rendering might also prevent us from being faked out. Like how different it is, because right now it like pops out,
Yeah.
and it won't pop out that much when it matches the rest of the green all around it. But right now it's kind of sticking out like a sore thumb, and it's tricking us, perhaps.
So what you're suggesting is that this material, all similar sized clapboards and green, is that what you're saying?
No, I was just saying that in the rendering, if the rest of
Color
the
the rest of
building
the
were
building.
colored in
Oh,
green,
I see what you're saying.
Jump out.
yeah, it just,
I got you. I see what you're
I
saying.
mean, yes, I know it's all gonna be the same color, but my brain has to be tricked into putting the green in, coloring it in.
Right.
I think,
By the way, these are not bay windows, so this one
Right.
and that one on the
It's
inside, they're
just-
flat. They're
They're
just,
It's a picture window.
Yes.
pictures.
That was
Exactly.
the word I should,
Okay.
thank you.
Yep.
and I think if you also show the pickets on the balcony, that'll give a different feel to the whole sense that this is transparent as it is. I appreciate what you were saying about the authenticity of, this is authentic to what it is versus what's there now. And I think a lot of the chaos that you see in the back is actually improved by your addition that kind of ties it together a little bit. So, from that aspect, I think it's a good thing.
And I have some question about the authenticity of 1780, because there's a large map of Portsmouth that's over at Portsmouth Hospital. There's no house in this location. And I think that map was maybe made in the mid-1800s or late 1800s. So clearly, it was picked up, either moved, or somebody went to the junkyard and started putting it together. So,
There
I mean,
These little streets here, Whidden, Wentworth, there are a lot of moved houses.
yeah.
Houses were moved there, and those little
Think
streets
about
kind of
how hard
crammed
it
in.
was to make a beam. Like, if some barn fell over, you'd go get those beams, because it'd take a week to make one beam, hand hewn, stuff like that, and they're made out of oak or whatever, some hardwood, it would be worth a lot of money.
And there's-
Because you can see where the tenons went, and the beam goes along like that, and there are these little cutouts where the tenons went in, right?
And one of them
in your
has-
dining room, where
one-
you see the tenons.
Yeah, you can see where the saw, and one of them
Yeah.
guys actually still has bark on the logs that they built the house on. So
Yeah.
there's, clearly, it wasn't somebody getting uniform cuts of wood to put together. So that's why I say who knows what the real history is. It looks nice when it says 1780 on the deed, but, well.
One thing I also wanted to ask, the balcony from the rear elevation is, it's a statement, because it projects a good bit, no brackets, and the base is very thin. What are you intending there, to give it a hovering effect?
Yeah, well, I just, we're on the pond, so we have to be careful about, setbacks and stuff like that, so I figured it was safer to not show anything coming to the ground. But there could be brackets, that they don't go to the ground. It's easy.
So you're gonna have to come out a good bit with a cantilever of some,
Well, we have
structural.
we have a back span of 12, so.
Okay, yeah.
Going out 4 is one third.
And you're gonna make it out of wood?
Yeah.
And it's never gonna rot? Good for you.
Never
Good
is
for
a
you, it's
long
nice.
time.
Yeah, good for
Never's a
you.
long time.
Anyone else, any other thoughts, questions?
My only comment that I find myself saying the same thing and about different properties is that I echo what they've said. I appreciate the comments. Just that when you look at a change like this, I want an element of it's still a Portsmouth house, that this property is in Portsmouth, and I would say that I think there's a couple tweaks that could be made so that that's clear.
So can you come back to what the recommendation is? Because I've heard several
Yes.
things here, somewhat four, somewhat double hung, so it seemed like as a conversation went on, that maybe having 4 windows, eliminating the clapboards here, but the balance on this the size is still okay. The divided light part of it is this, except this is what the house across the way has that they insisted they keep, it's the double hung, and they have some divided. So again, the neighborhood reflects lots of changes over time. I'd hate to come back and just say, change it again. So what is the consensus? What would be the easiest way of
It
solving
sounds
this?
like one of the main issues is the sort of asymmetry of this addition. So figuring out a way to help balance that and keep the symmetry, keep the sort of feel of the Georgian feel of the house as being very regular. And whether that is moving the 3 windows into the center of the wall or adding 4 so it's all windows, that again is still your choice. So whatever you guys feel comfortable with in terms of what your preferred design is.
If you agree to the 4, we've got the drawings on the 4. We just didn't want to throw everything out there, but with that recommendation, essentially the drawings are done with 4 over 4.
Great.
I don't know if we have them here, Scott, because I only brought.
Both sides go all the way 4 to 4.
It was 4 and 2, just because it's 12 feet by about 7 or 8 feet. So the 4s would fit in, I forgot, 2'10" on the window, so you can get 4 on one side and 2 on the other. And that would give a symmetry.
Well, this is, I don't have the original sketch, but that was when it was sketched in as 4, and then I drew over in red when we met, because we changed it to 3, but you could see that would be obviously it would not, I'm sure you wouldn't have the same reaction of it being asymmetrical.
Can I peek at it?
I don't know if you can see
Oh,
that.
I think
Sorry,
There's a floor. Oh, yeah, okay.
That's a microphone.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think
Yeah,
there's a
I don't-
color one in there of the.
No, I don't know about,
Yeah.
Can I just comment?
Yes.
I would think that's an improvement from the other one. I think the window underneath on the first floor just looks.
so if the symmetry's an issue too, then here's, okay, this is, the kitchen now goes to this length, and the addition, and it's a little hard to concept, but if we were looking for symmetry, if that's an issue, then would that mean eliminating a window on the end? So this is the east face of the house. And where the original house comes to here, so you can get 2 over 2, or you can get 3, or you could even get 4.
The masses who are listening at home are hearing
Oh.
different, so
Let me,
you can just move it out of the way.
no, that's, I think this is where it ends. This is where the original house ends, so it'd only be then 7 and a half.
You're adding on these two, that space.
And I think everybody agrees that the mass of the addition is fine, the shape is fine. I think it's just the placement of the windows, and I think you could come back next time with 2 options that work for you. And, you know, probably we'd find one that worked.
So again, looking, you want symmetry, and again, I'm going to go back to your question about the windows in the historic piece. You know, we seem to be split here as to whether we make it look like it
Right.
did before, or are we doing something to separate the,
And again,
distinguish it?
right, and again, we have varying opinions on how to approach that.
We don't actually have any of the language of making providing the basis of our rulings having anything to do with the National
Secretary of
Interior Standards. That we have our own little vision here in Portsmouth that keeps us from having to make every wall out of glass or sheet metal, as you mentioned earlier, just to
We do have our-
verify that it's brand new.
Right, we do have our own guidelines. So, what was I gonna say?
Yeah, we had
But-
forgotten.
Yes, so, but this, we also, and I think that, the fact that even though this is the side of the house, that you can't really see much from the street, but is still fairly visible because it faces the pond, is a bit of an issue. The back of the house, in my opinion, is less visible from most places.
Look at it. Look at the back of the house. Really?
Well, it's fun.
Damn it. Okay, there's a joke in
But
that.
it is
Excuse me.
It's a piece of everything that's
It
happened
is.
there.
It is, which in a way, as an architectural historian, is of interest because it tells the history of the house. So, but,
And this addition to tell the history too.
Yeah.
It was not built in 1850, it was built in 2023.
I don't think you'll confuse anyone.
Well, no, I agree. I agree.
I
So
mean-
what we're trying to do is find, there's a sweet spot in there, so
yes,
I think what I heard was centering 3 so that there's equal amount of new addition on either side, staying with the green clapboards, or going with 4 and staying with the green clapboards. Both of those satisfy the desire to keep symmetry and stay away from the corner. So we have to figure that out.
I think
we draw to it.
I just want to put in there, I think the first floor window with those additions, it is still, for me, a bit of a symmetry issue. Like,
and that's
Yeah.
that's an issue that you're gonna have to deal with. It does stand out to me too, because you have this very mid-century picture window beneath something that is, very different. So it is all, it's all very different. I think, again, we're still keeping the symmetry and the look of the street, you know, the facade and the street-facing elevations. And it's just the fact that you are stuck with that unless you want to really expand your project. So it's, and that's something you just have to work around.
There's another room, there's another similar, there are three of these windows. There's also one on the back side
Right.
on the
Yeah, I
east.
saw that.
So, again, it's, you can look at the pictures and see that everyone's different.
Yep.
And it would be nice not to have the casement windows, but somebody's put a lot of energy and expense into that already. So, in the best of all worlds, you could start from scratch. And then how much, if we look at this and think about the interior too, and part of Scott's design is trying to make this work as a room inside, a kitchen that works. And so I appreciate the outside, but inside there's a design element that goes with all of this too. And quite honestly, you know, the 4 windows is not nearly as convenient as having extra space, and we have to have closets. You know, we
Right.
do change our clothes periodically, so, you know,
Right.
those kind of things are a little bit critical. The form follows function, so I appreciate that, yeah, the effort that went into not putting 4 windows was for the consideration of how people live.
I still think that you show these pickets, you get a different feel of that relationship between these 3 windows and that window. That goes away, that tension.
Oh, I'm sorry, repeat that again?
Show the pickets drawn in the balcony,
Oh, I see what you're saying, okay.
and that's very relatable to that balcony matches that window.
Mhm.
And the fact that the clash between these 3 and that centered window goes away.
The separation there.
Yeah.
So you're in favor of 4 on both
I'm,
floors?
I'm
In symmetry?
sympathetic to this.
Okay, what does sympathetic mean? Give me more, give me more.
I'm just saying that I think you have license to do a lot of what you're doing that bothers people here.
I think when you come back, I think you actually don't have 2 options. I think you have 3 options. And I think, one, like, I forget who even advanced the idea, yes, you can go 4 windows the whole way across. I do understand that presents interior problems. I think you can do the 3 and 3, just put them in the middle and make them symmetrical. I think you got a 3rd option, which is, you know, some wall space, a window, some wall space, a window, so 2 and 2. And in support of that, I actually had this problem on our house at one time on a modern addition years ago, but it was a Anderson crank-out windows on the sides. I don't know if that's what you have, and then a center window. And it, not only was it falling out, but it also looked really bad too. So what I ended up doing, these little sides were framed in. And then an historic window here, which matched, like, let's say my windows here, it was a super cheap fix, because I was only buying 2 windows. One, I hate looking upside down.
You do
2.
well. Right.
So I was only buying 2 windows,
Okay.
and then a little bit of clapboard and a little bit of 2x4s. So you could actually take care of that very expeditiously if you want to, even though it's not within the scope of your project. But yeah, I think if you come back, and I think Margot said like all the same color of green or whatever, because it messes with my mind too. But I think if you make everything green, and you got 3 options, I think. 3 and 3 in the middle, 4 the whole way across, or 2 and 2.
Okay, is that consensus? Is everyone agreeing with that?
I think I'm the only one who hasn't spoken, and that's what I would agree with. It's more just about creating that symmetry, so it looks consistent. It'll be obvious it's a new addition, just because the number of windows that you're likely to choose, it's going to be very obvious, and because of the cantilevered balcony. It would be nice to also see what the balcony looks like, which, on your drawing, if you can do that, I think that will help to create that distinction. The existing windows, I know you can't do anything about them now, but if you create symmetry in this addition, you're on the way. In the next project, you may decide to replace those windows. And that's understandable. But by creating symmetry, because those windows are centered in the space, it'll balance the project a little bit better, and those windows won't look as out of place. They're always going to look a little out of place, but.
And I do have one more quick question on this. So you're planning on leaving the corner board of the original house in, as you know.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that in itself always helps to advertise, yes, this is an addition.
Yeah. No, a lot of, on the Department of Interior guidelines, they sometimes, like I've done a lot of libraries and stuff up in Maine and stuff, and they were adding, doubling the size of a library or something like that, and we have to make a joint where the wall steps back for, like, it's legible from the street, so if it's a brick building, you have to step back and then come back out with a brick, and creates a distinct line. And they even say you have to be able to take it off and not destroy the original building. You probably, this.
Yes.
I'm speaking to the choir, but I don't think that's really necessary here because it'll be wood frame, so you can take it apart. But that's, I think, part of what we were trying to do.
We're not
is to
gonna-
say, we're not gonna touch that corner board. We're not gonna run the clapboards through,
Yeah.
straight through like that, and leave that corner board, because that
great.
gabled end like that creates, like, that's when the kid draws a house. That's what they draw, that, exactly
Yes.
that.
Yep.
Chimney in the middle,
This may help you because you mentioned energy efficiency. And again, I had a similar problem, old windows. And I went before the board and they approved them, thank you. But anyway, I don't know if Pella or Marvin have this coating, but Anderson does. And I can go on record that I've got my windows with this. They work, it's called passive sun. And basically, if you're facing the sun, it lets the heat in, but the coating keeps the heat from going out. And if you're not worried about air conditioning, and I'm not, because I think it's already cold here, but the passive sun coating, it works. And just like your sunlight that comes in, it traps it, it holds it, and even in this extreme weather, our first floor and second floor windows that face the mill pond, it works. So that might help you efficiency-wise and.
What it's called?
It's called low E coating. Low
Yeah.
E coating. Yeah, it moves the heat to the warmer side. If it's outside, it repels it. If it's inside, it repels it back in. Yeah,
Well, no, this is another one. It actually lets the solar in. Some of the low
This one
E's
does.
block the solar on the outside. This particular coating lets the solar through on the outside and then keeps it from going out on the inside. It works.
Different word for heat mirror when we were in Palo Alto. And that's exactly, that was 40 years ago. It was Heat Mirror was the name of the company, but it did exactly what you
Yeah,
described.
it works so well, believe me.
It's a good thing to, thank you.
All right.
Okay.
So, yes, so you did get a lot of feedback,
Yeah.
but hopefully it's leading you in the right
That's
direction.
why we're
so.
here. And I just wanted to do a shout out for Isaac, who helped me get organized and put this together. Thank you for that.
Sure.
Made sure it got from the bin out there, or the
Yeah.
drop off back into y'all. But
Well, thank you for, yes, I got all of those emails too. I just didn't participate, but I appreciate all of the communication, because we often, many of our applicants don't ask as many questions, so thank you. And,
Thank you.
yeah, thank you for a very well presented presentation. So,
What do they want to do? What would you like to do next? Because you have the option of continuing to a work session the next month, or we can do a work session / public hearing. How much more time and feedback do you
I
want
think,
or need?
I think we could be ready for a public hearing next month. I mean, I the feedback is consistent. It's just, it's about the placement of the windows versus the offset. So, I think that
Yeah.
is really comes back to you and Margaret, whether you want to have the 4 or, we have to figure out upstairs what to do.
Yeah, the
Because
three,
we have-
centered 3 or 4 across.
Yeah.
They're all good options.
Yeah,
It's like-
right.
All right,
I
so
don't have strong.
we'll close this work session, and then you'll work with Isaac to
Yeah.
apply for a work session / public hearing, so we can have discussion beforehand and then
Right.
make that decision if it's ready.
Just for my sake, when we're talking about symmetry, we're talking, if it's 4 windows over 4 sliding doors, it's gonna be 4 over 4, and it's gonna be 2 over 2, is that correct? Other than the 3 in the center, so whatever happens on the second floor happens on the first floor.
It doesn't have to happen exactly, but you want that symmetry, so it could be 2 above and 4, something so that it's not,
Okay.
weird and wonky and offset.
And one last question, you asked about the porch and the wood. Is that your preferred, we assumed it was going to be wood, but, plenty of places have metal porches in New Orleans and Paris and places like that, and we don't really assume that look. But then
Right.
again, if you had thin metal spindles, that would probably be less obvious as an outcropping from the house. So
Yeah.
is
Plus
Just-
the painting.
Just please don't do plastic.
oh no.
So that's,
Shit. So any of
We're probably expecting a wood frame thing. What I was referring to was the structure of it, the cantilevered structure. I think you should talk to the building inspector about the cantilever.
Okay.
Decks fall off. It's really embarrassing for inspections departments when it happens.
lost some people down on the Cape about 15 years ago when they had a party on a deck and it didn't hold up.
Every building inspections department in New England's got a picture of one of those. Weddings, anniversaries, funerals. You get 30 people out there and they go down. Anyway, just trying to give you a heads up.
So just to finalize that, then wood, no consideration for metal, which is fine. I just want to hear what the group says.
if you want to propose metal and it looks appropriate, then, it's fine. Again, I think, wood is our usual language,
Okay.
but, we're not gonna tell you what to do, so.
The only reason I brought it up is it looks like
It's
it's
too
about
thin.
2x4s or 2x6s projecting out there. The way it's drawn.
They're actually 8s, but
I'm sorry?
they're drawn as 2x8s.
2x8s, and you put 5/4 decking on it, next thing you know, it just doesn't look like that. It looks very thin. That's why I brought it up.
Okay.
Put a couple
I mean,
posts at the ends with some plants.
We do have a structural engineer that will help guide us on that in terms of
Absolutely.
whether we can cantilever that floor out.
Isaac will walk you right to him.
I'll make a motion to close the work session then.
Great.
Great.
A second?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
So
Chair
next
votes
is
aye.
work session
And public hearing.
public
Yes.
hearing.
So what we have
Oh,
to do,
okay.
we'll just work the dates, because we have like 2 weeks to get the drawings back in.
Yeah.
So we'll have to talk about that. To get the drawings revised, we have to submit them 17 days
17,
or,
that's right.
months from now.
Okay.
Yes. Okay.
Short month too, right?
Of course.
So we have 11 days to resubmit.
Good. Well, thank you very much.
All right,
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, so we can sit here if you would like, because we do have one more item of business, of discussion, which is the discussion of the proposed motion by Rich Blaylock, which was amended by Councilor Cook at the last city council meeting, which was the idea that new construction should be removed from the purview of the Historic District Commission. And there was, so hopefully everybody watched the meeting or read minutes or whatever, and kind of are up on this, but the original motion ended up slightly different, so I'll let Councilor Cook read what she had passed.
Yes, the motion was changed to request a report back from the Planning and Sustainability staff, Historic District Commission, and the Planning Board on the impact and cost associated with review of new construction from the Historic District Commission and any recommendations to improve review efficiency.
So it seems as though the initial problem was that the idea that the Historic District Commission review on new construction specifically added undue time and cost to the developer, which then prevented any affordable housing, or at least added cost such that the units were more expensive. I think there was a robust discussion about that, but I think what we can talk about is, first of all, how we feel about that as a group, and secondly, are there ways where I think we can all agree that there's always ways that we could improve efficiency. Nobody, ourselves included, like to be part of long, drawn-out, multi-meeting reviews. So I'm happy to take thoughts on how to respond to the motion, and we'll have to kind of pull something together that Isaac will write up that we can respond to the city council with.
I have multiple questions and thoughts.
So,
And I'll admit, I have not watched the city council thing. It's on my to-do list.
and I
So-
was out of town during that, so I didn't watch it either. So what was the final resolution that,
I can read it back.
thank you.
Request a report back from the Planning and Sustainability staff, Historic District Commission, and the Planning Board on the impact and costs associated with review of new construction from the Historic District Commission, and any recommendations to improve review efficiency.
So,
Is this
I
our,
wanted, sorry.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I wanted to put my disclaimer if I haven't watched it yet, so some of my questions might be answered
Thank
in
you.
that. Did this stem from a particular project that this proposal came about? Like there was a problem and it's been, like, is there data supporting this proposal?
This was not my motion. The
Yeah.
original motion from Councilor Blaylock
Yeah.
had to do with removing all review of new construction from the Historic District Commission's
And
purview.
and in his definition of new construction, that was an empty lot. So not an addition,
Right.
not in another building where there's already a building, just
Well, like all the
So-
North End, North Mill Pond projects,
Right, so
nobody would get to review
was
it.
there something that triggered this, or is this just his sentiment and propose this?
He didn't say that there was something that
Okay.
triggered it.
he
then-
did mention there was hearsay from a friend who,
Okay. Okay, but we don't have a scenario. Okay, secondly, how many lots are there in the historic district?
I
So this goes-
hypothesized on this during the
Okay.
meeting because if you think about empty lots or lots that would be fully buildable, you're left with 2 bank lots on State Street, the South Church lot on State Street, the Masonic Temple lot on Middle Street, and the back portion of the McIntyre building parking lot. Beyond that, I mean, if you guys can think of anything else, I can't think of any other empty lots in the
Well,
city.
so I
Devil's-
would like for us to,
Devil's advocate for a
Yeah,
moment,
let's,
what if the Historic New England decided to subdivide Runlet Maze, and you could develop what would be easily defined as a vacant lot there?
Yes, that's a possibility, right,
I'd
subdividing
like to
lots.
think not much of one, but
I know, but
not likely, but
And with Kennebunk building going into the new McNabb project, what if somebody wants to raise that building on Maplewood? Then HDC doesn't get to review it. So my comment, and I'm just really shooting from the hip, if you walk about town and go in any given coffee shop, without giving a name, any given coffee shop, you're gonna hear people moaning and complaining about, "Well, I'm not saying facts or no facts. I'm talking about public consensus. Public consensus is the homeowner bears the brunt of the financial burden and the developer reaps the profits. And yeah, this is another whole matter. There are two different tax scales and two different valuations. That's a whole other different animal. But that plays into this. So if you take HDC out from public review of new construction, you actually create more asymmetry, but you actually make the public perception even worse. So I'm amazed that, Councilor Blaylock would want to do that. But the fact of the matter is, how do you come in here and these two gentlemen, which were just here trying their darndest, he's staying in a house that he's lived in probably most of his life because they've known one another since college, and he just wants to improve it. And, we're holding him to a standard. How does a town then get away with saying, okay, sorry, developer, you don't have a standard. It's new construction, you just go have fun with it. That's a problem. And if you go in any other town, Newburyport, go down, drive through Newburyport. I was just in Newport, Rhode Island 3 weeks ago. It's completely harmonious, and there's new hotels down there. Somebody reviewed all that stuff. So I think if we don't have some say over what a developer does, we might as well not even be here. We might as well just go home. Because you can't hold the homeowners' feet to the fire when they're paying the brunt of the development cost of development, when they're paying the brunt of the tax bill, because every time a new project goes up, infrastructure changes. And I don't see anything in Seacoast Online about what portion a developer pays. So do you hold, and I'm repeating, but I don't think you can hold the individual homeowner's feet to the fire and then say, Mr. Developer, go have fun. It's not equitable. And I'll tell you what, you get the right attorney getting a hold of that, that's going to be a nice case that ends up in Concord. So I don't think it's a good idea. And I'll shut up at this point.
Is this our forum for developing our position? Because, okay. I wish I'd been on the agenda.
It is.
Is it? I'm sorry. Wish I had read the agenda. Now, the idea is that we struggle with affordable housing because this process kicks a project into luxury housing. That's ridiculous. That is ridiculous. I'd say our process, regulatory process, is like 1.5% to 2%, and then if you get into, say, coastal permitting, it might get up to 5%. So this is a solution that's looking for a problem, and I wish I wish Rich Blaylock had talked to some other people about this before presenting it, because I think it's a big stir-up over nothing. So that's my position. This is not causing us to lose affordable housing in this community, this process. I'm sorry. This is necessary. Actually, I think it'd be more far necessary to look at developments outside of the historic district, like what's growing up on the North Mill Pond.
Yeah.
So I'll leave it at that.
I need a display prop.
I agree that there may be a slight increase in cost, but it's not the cause of low housing, inexpensive housing happening. HDC happens to also be one of the prime neighborhoods, and anyone who buys a lot, there's no way they're going to be, even Mother Teresa couldn't put low housing here and not save, and lose on that. So there's a slight connection, but I think that connection also makes the value of everything that's happening in the HDC in this neighborhood increase too. So yes, there's a slight increase, but it's not the cause of why we don't have low housing yield. Second thing, and I brought it up with solar, is the HDC represents less than 5% of Portsmouth. So if you can build your new buildings whatever you want. But this one area, which has, I think, benefits to everyone, not only in the area, but the who live in Portsmouth, is as you said, a solution that has no problem.
Well, and tourists come to Portsmouth to see the historic downtown. They don't come to see, any of the strip malls or anything like that. So here's my little prop. Because, and I'm gonna try to, best I can with my 2-second thought out historical prop here to shoot down the affordable housing argument. So, I don't know if I wanna say council or planning or who, but if Mr. Developer comes in and says, hey, I wanna build a group of these condos and I'm gonna keep the math simple. It's actually worse than what it is right now, but I'll keep the math simple. I want to build a 1,500 square foot condo that costs $1.5 million. Well, when I do this, okay, I'm now outside the market of the average homeowner, certainly the person with 2.3 children, which is why there's no families in downtown anymore. But if he gets approved for this 1.5 million, 1,500 square foot condo, how many master bathrooms does he put in? 1. How many master bedrooms does he put in? 1. How many gourmet quality kitchens does he put in? 1. Okay, so now we're at 3 major things. He's probably got a second bedroom, maybe even a third. But his high cost items, the kitchen, the master bedroom, the master bath, 1 of each. If on the other hand, planning, and I'm lay it at planning's desk or council, but if they say, nah, we're not gonna let you do that because we need affordable housing. And affordable housing is not $1.5 million. We need affordable housing. We want you to come back with 2. We want you to come back with 2 $750,000, 750 square foot condos. Well, if you do that, now what's he got to do? He's got to put in 2 master baths, 2 master bedrooms, 2 kitchens. So his profit margin goes down. The more affordable, and this is something that gets totally missed, and I'm using this forum to say it because I say this so many times to people that I know. The more a developer builds high-end condos, the better his profit margin is. His profit margin actually goes down when he builds an affordable product. And that's the mousetrap in this whole thing. So to say HDC should not review new projects, you're not going to get more affordable housing. You're going to get probably less. And you're going to get a town that is less harmonious. And then 15, 20 years from now, somebody's going to say, where'd all the tourists go to? Well, they went to Newburyport. Well, they went to Newport. They used to be in Portsmouth. So I think we need to stay where we are.
I would like to continue a couple thoughts.
Yeah.
If I were to point to anything, I'd point to zoning. McNabb just came through with 143 Pleasant that was initially proposed as affordable housing, and my understanding, it wasn't us that changed it. We were just here for the exterior, a couple meetings on a huge initiative and build. Not that that would have been categorized as a new build, because I don't know, actually maybe a lot, anyhow, whatever. Using that as an example, it was zoning that has changed the outcome of that project, and that's not the first time that that has happened.
Court Street.
Yeah.
This project on Court Street.
Yeah.
And then I think holding developers accountable when they have proposed projects for affordable housing and then they change it after they get approvals, I also have seen to be an issue. I do think there's other things that I already, just gonna say it here, like I think we could do a better job of tracking our materials in the historic district, but for anyone with a lean Six Sigma background, like you don't just fix a problem until you know the root cause, and I don't see the correlation or the exact problem that led to this conclusion, and therefore that this will solve the affordable housing. And I think it's the historic district is 5% of the properties in Portsmouth. So this seems like a lot of effort for a solution that's very hypothetical with no problem, no data, no outcome tied to that, except for those, I'll speak for myself personally, that live in the historic district and have bought into it. And if, and I live very close as the example to the back of McIntyre, if some wild structure got erected there, I would not be happy about that, and that wouldn't be fair to those of us who have gone through the historic district, including myself, and been held to these standards, like these gentlemen, that this would be exempt from that. So I am very strongly opposed to this because I don't see the root cause, I don't see the data, and I think that's what you're proposing, is getting some information.
Yeah, so,
Okay.
so the motion was changed.
Yeah.
So what you're opposed to is not what the motion is now.
Right.
Right, yeah, yeah, yeah.
So we're opposed
So
to
I
the
was
idea.
opposed to the motion, and that's why I changed it.
Yeah,
That's why we're asking for a report back.
yeah, okay.
And specifically just a report back and any recommendations to improve efficiency.
Yeah.
So I think it's critical to acknowledge that, yes, the process does increase cost. Depending upon the size of the project, that cost is minimal, right? So it's your attorney's fees, your architect's fees. In some cases, it's just existing staff that are here for a few hours on an evening for a work session or 2 work sessions. And so you're paying, those are your increased costs and delay in time frame, and say the cost of supplies increases, right? So I think it is important to acknowledge that there is a cost, right? But it's not just
That
the
applies, yeah, that applies to everybody that comes.
That's everybody's cost, though.
I know that, but.
Because
but-
I'll pay that cost if I can make certain that there's a McDonald's getting put up next to my house. That's not even a cost anymore to me.
Exactly. So it is everyone's cost. For the really large projects, and I strongly, since this is where Councilor Blaylock came up with this, is the really large projects do take a lot more time. And so while I understand that they need to take more time, there is a cost associated with it. I think it's just important to acknowledge that, right? That's not a valuation statement on whether or not we should do those reviews. I personally think it's important to do those reviews. I think that is just part of the cost of building in the historic district. And I also think that the lots that we're talking about that are left are critical to downtown infrastructure and the downtown staying cohesive. So we're talking about some of the most important lots in the city and really like in the critical core area of the downtown, besides the Masonic Temple lot, but then it has its own considerations for the historic period of the Middle Street houses. So I have serious concerns about exactly where the empty lots are located and moving forward with anything that would eliminate review. But efficiency, I think maybe is something that the HCC can talk about.
Yeah.
I've had several people approach me separately before this to say, hey, can we have a time frame on review? Can you set a time limit on review? I think that the challenges are not just with the Historic District Commission, but they're also with planning and zoning.
Yeah.
And it's when projects end up in planning, zoning, HEC review, all overall for more than a few years, that the cost is really significant. And so I don't think it just rests here. I think some of the challenges we have are with planning and zoning as well. So I think it would be important to acknowledge that too.
Yes. But can I just share my one, and to be clear though, I do think we can do, and I've raised this and I've already started, and I said this is part of why I wanted to be on this committee, having been through it, the historic district, is there is no reference of materials for any one of previously approved materials, and I think that would make it exponentially more efficient if you could reference these materials, as materials that have been approved. They're buried in 250-page PDFs. I think it's a project that the city should take on to even go back through those and say, yep, because when you're presented with a plan with 40 things, and to be transparent, I use technology to scrape all of this just recently, and you can't scrape out that information easily. It's probably gonna maybe need to be manual, but if that database could be made available, it would absolutely increase efficiency for anybody to reference who architects on big projects and small homeowners of, oh, this window would get approved because you've approved it before, we can do this, so.
Yeah. So it sounds like what our report back needs to say is that we as a commission uphold the importance of review of all new construction and all projects within the historic district. And that, you know, whereas we can acknowledge that there is an added cost and time period for review, it is a benefit to the entire district and therefore the entire city to have this review and give the public the opportunity to come and partake and speak to, you know, the new fabric that is going in to our historic core. But there's always room for improvement, and I do think that we can look at ways to improve our efficiency, to help a homeowner, to also help a developer to know exactly what, maybe not exactly, but have an idea of what is expected so that they can come in well prepared and not guessing at what they should present. And I think the suggestion that we start to pull together at least even very basic lists of types of windows, types of doors, clapboards, trim materials, roofing that is generally approved or has been approved in certain areas. And Isaac, we can work with you on trying to pull something like that together to help applications come in better prepared and improve efficiency. And just to reiterate again, we are waiting to hear back, but I am fairly confident that we will get our CLG grant at the very least for training from the National Alliance of Preservation Commissions. And there are a variety of topics that we can choose from. One of them is review of new construction. One of them is, you know, how to plan a review process and how to make sure that you take all of, you know, procedurally that it works and we're hitting all the right notes and making so that we're not making any mistakes and having to go back or correct anything, which happens from time to time. So I do think that you know, our response can be positive and that we're doing important work, we feel, and that we can always take opportunities within this year, I think, to improve our process procedures.
I think that's well said. And Kate, I think what might give you some ammunition too, and tell me if I'm wrong, please, but the whole process we went through for the Citizens Bank project, if you go back and look at the first submission, it looked like an airport out of the Midwest. And by the time we got done, it looks like something that belongs right there beside the middle school and the courthouse. So if we didn't review that, we'd have an airport terminal down there on whatever that street is, Parrott Avenue. So that might be something you can take back, you know, and that's real ammunition. That's real life. That's what happened.
I was just gonna say that the list of materials is nice, but it's not where a project lingers. It lingers in the first couple stages.
And we're talking about big projects.
Right, brand new work. And it lingers in the mass and the approach and the language. Like those first steps are where we get hung up. If we delay a project, it's right in there.
Yeah.
It's not towards the end. It's not in the materials that we're rejecting projects. It's in those things.
Yeah.
Well, and also just on that point, so whatever the number is, but let's just say one of these new buildings costs upwards of $15–20 million to build, X amount of thousands, I'm just gonna make up a number, in the realm of $50,000 for some architectural work, I don't think is going to, in the eyes of a developer, go, you know what, I'm gonna put some affordable housing in there now, because I don't have to pay $50,000. I don't see the connection to that historic district review process. And on the flip side, and I wish I would have known this was going to be on the agenda, especially since it was about the Historic District Council, and I'm going to work on getting a notification so I can see what's on the agenda for City Council moving ahead. But what about some incentives to developers to build affordable housing, tax breaks, things like that?
It has to be proactive rather than a trickle down.
Yeah.
So can I just point out a problem with the motion? So the motion asks for a report back on the impact and costs associated with the review of new construction. That asks for numbers. And I'm not sure how we can help with that process because we don't know how long these architects take to do the extra reviews. I'm not sure how we're going to answer this. I think the only thing we can do is say, yes, we think we have some ways to improve efficiency. I'm not sure that you can answer that. And I would like to reiterate what Martin said. In the time that I've been on the commission, the large projects that have gone through with minimal fuss have been with architects who paid attention to our design guidelines, started at the first step of massing, and worked their way along instead of coming in with a fully baked set of plans that we then had to have them completely walk back, or because they wouldn't walk it back, we had to nibble around the edges in an attempt to try to take a square and turn it into a circle. And so, there's some, maybe there's some efficiencies we can do on our side, but what do we say to the applicants in terms of, look, you're kind of causing your own pain here, and you're increasing your costs because you insist on hammering on going straight to the end product, or forcing this issue. I think that it kind of has to be looked at all around, because there are definitely architects who come in here, and when I see somebody's name on the bottom of a set of plans when they're put in, I think, okay, well, this is probably 90% there, because they know what we require, because they've paid attention, because they've done their research. And it just makes a huge difference. But that's not on us.
I think that's very well said, Margot, and I think you can sum it up with attitude and also willingness to do what works. You know what I'm saying? It's just, it's that simple. And like I said, there's your ammunition. Are we going to end up with a airport terminal out of the Midwest, or are we going to end up with a nice little building? So.
I know that this is not apples and oranges, but we had an applicant on Pleasant Street with a 3-story building that came in with a Hail Mary set of plans to put a 4th condominium unit in the building because of an event that happened. And they were really just testing to see how that was going to work, and any monies that they spent on their architectural fees, ignoring the fact that they had a full set of plans, any money that they spent was really speculative to see if they could get that 4th unit, your 4th unit. And another big bathroom and another big, but they were seeing what they could get out of it. And if we are going to try to protect the developers from their own avarice, that we can roll up right now. That boat sailed. Came in. I'm not saying it was a bad thing to do, but they were playing a game. I mean, it's not a bad thing, just gaming. What can you get? It turned out it didn't make any sense, and they not quickly, but pretty rapidly reverted back to the set of plans that they had, which were perfectly fine and had been duly deliberated by this commission for some period of time. So some people even complain when they get what they went for. Another thing that I might just throw out is when I heard this brewing, the first thing I thought was, if the historic movement in the community continues throughout these kinds of assaults, it's going to turn it from a historic district into a landmarks commission. And I swear, the people that are pushing for this don't want it to become a landmarks commission, because that means that every single thing has to stand by itself all alone. Can't depend on the goodwill of its next door neighbors. It's a whole other animal. Again, maybe what it does spell is the doom of the historic movement in the community. If that's what they want, I guess they can have that. They hold that reign.
Sorry, I want to say one more thing. The real issue is market value on properties. If you remove the historic district, that is not going to incentivize a developer to go, I'm going to build some really inefficient, or not inefficient, but inexpensive, thank you, apartments as opposed to the $1 to $2 to $5 million apartment. It is just going to remove one small expense on a very, very large project. And so that's where I probably going to attend the next city council meeting or whenever this is discussed again, because it's trying to solve a problem with the wrong solution without any data to support this, and it's not going to end up in the results that it's proposing.
And so, speaking of the data side of things,
Yeah.
and, the Vice Chair made a very good point, that really what is being asked for here, I'm not sure that it was intended, but what is being asked for in the motion is sort of a study and numbers, which I don't know that our planning staff have the time for, to go through, because you would have to look at the cost and time and expenses of review of projects that are in the historic district and not in the historic district, and then start comparing those things, and then start trying to put numbers to those things. And, you know, you could hire a consultant for $50,000 to do that, but, you know, this is not, it shouldn't be on our staff.
We could cut our salaries in half.
Yeah, it's the
Well,
same.
no, the
If you
data
cut it in
lies
half,
within the
it's still the
developers,
same.
so that's
Right.
contacting them to volunteer this
Right.
financial information, right? So.
Yeah, there are challenges here, right, with collecting this type of data. The one thing that the Historic District Commission could provide as far as data is, say, the average length of time that it takes to go through the process, depending upon the size of a project. So if you're a large commercial project, how long does it take? A new construction commercial project, how long does it on average take? A homeowner, on average, how long does it take? I think these statistics will be in the favor of the Historic District Commission, because it will show that it takes homeowners a lot less time than it takes some of these larger projects, because they're larger. But it also, I think it will show that those projects don't get hung up here as much as they get hung up in planning or zoning. So, so I think there's value in at least going through and just coming up with time frame. And beyond that, you know, maybe recommendations on efficiency. I like the suggestion that the idea that you have some come here that aren't prepared, essentially, that didn't follow the guidelines. So maybe an efficiency measure could be a letter that goes out. It says, these are some recommendations we have to improve the speed of your process. And the commission could just have a form letter that goes out to large projects and says, if you carefully review the guidelines, you know, and provide some of these suggestions to those who haven't gone through it. And maybe that does improve efficiency. I don't know.
I think certainly we can go back. I mean, the people who've been on the commission for a long time can probably think of a whole list of projects. And one of the dangers of doing that, or just one that we'll need to think about, is that certain projects will need to be footnoted, because sometimes the reason they've lingered has absolutely nothing to do with the HDC, and in some cases not even the design. Take a look at the State Street Louis building. That project was delayed for a whole variety of reasons, one after the other, after the other, after the other. And I don't know how you would say, how long did it take to approve that project? Because when do you say it was actually approved? Because it was actually approved about 4 or 5 times. So there will be outliers, but I think, you know, to take a look at an average project is going to be kind of hard, but we could probably come up with, you know, with a list.
And I think that's true. I mean, I think if you, and this is what I was trying to say in my little soapbox speech, but I think if you try to hide behind the affordable housing banner, you're missing the point. And like Reagan said, you know, some people come in and they know what kind of a building blends in, and others, you know, want to, you know, erect modern architecture in the heart of downtown, and that doesn't necessarily fly. And that's why I was saying about attitude. But like I said, I don't think you can hide behind the affordable housing banner. I think you have to say, you have to look at the opposite of this. If we are removed, what happens? Well, then the homeowner has to blend in, but and I don't mean to repeat, but the developer doesn't. The developer can build what they darn well want to build. And is that the city you want to live in? I don't, and I'll tell you that right now.
53% of properties have come through in 1 to 2 times.
This is my,
I have all the data, I scraped all the data into
so,
What if we were to have just thinking creatively, what if we were to have like a pre-meeting approval to say, this project's ready to start the process?
The
And-
planning board does this, you know.
Well, you look at, okay. You look at this, look at we would get a package and we would go look at the package and say, I could see this getting started. It's ready for the board. It's ready for meetings. Prior to that, you could say, this is not ready to go to the HTC. This is not up to our standard.
Well, and this is partially what Isaac will do for many of the applications, but it also depends on the applicants providing that information to him and, at enough time in advance, because my only concern with that would be, then you're adding still at least 1 more month to this project, just to say like,
But
yes, come back next month.
But it's that, during that month, the classic developer doesn't have a lot of money on the table. During that month, the classic developer isn't making huge payments to the bank. The last month of the project, he's making huge payments to the bank, but not the first month. Something about the napkin stage. When you've got almost no money spent on it, and you're just spitballing a shape on a napkin. I mean, if anybody's been in the trade, that actually happens. That's how you move on. Very few people just hire an architect and expect to see something come of it. And so that's the idea of, when do you want to start spending your money?
Pre-vetting.
Right.
Vet the project before it starts hitting the meeting process. And we could participate in that.
Well, that's massing, that's.
Right.
you know,
Indeed.
If you look at
Where's
that-
Heinz
if
when you
right,
need him?
If you look
Right.
at the 4-step process that's in our design guidelines, and you look at the Heinemann Building, and you look at 2 Russell Street, those architects came in with blocks, and we talked about blocks first. They were tempted, but they didn't put windows in, and they didn't put doors, and they didn't do all that sort of research on materials. They just came in with
Big white buildings.
yeah, big white buildings, maybe with a little bit of fenestration, penciled in, just to show that it's not gonna be one big massive building. And the people at 2 Russell, they even bothered to go back and take a look at what got turned down before, to understand that one big building wasn't gonna fly.
And,
That's smart. That's efficient.
and in support of what Margot just said, sitting here thinking about it, there's things that we don't have control over. And Reagan said, if she sees a certain name on a set of plans coming in, they've done their due diligence, and they've got a project. This person's coming to you with a project. It's going to look good. It's going to fit in. It's going to go through.
Sounds like a
But
bias.
But conversely, if somebody's like, and I'm going to use the word modern architecture, but if I want to build a modern architecture building in downtown Portsmouth, it's not our fault that developer or that architect has had that attitude to, well, let's see if I can get away with letting this fit in. That's probably a better choice of language. That's not our fault. They've made that choice to come to us with that. So that's not our fault. That's not us giving them a cost, that's them giving themselves a cost.
What I've often said too, I think within recent history, we've done a fairly good job, but earlier on, a while ago, I would hear people complain about buildings or designs or whatever that is not great, and what is the HDC doing? And I kind of have to turn around and say, we're only as good as the designs that are brought to us.
Right.
And, you know, one of the things that Councilor Blaylock said is that he didn't think that we should be doing as much designing of projects as we do, and I don't think that we do that terribly much, but it's not our job to design. We can give ideas and recommendations and opinions, but it really is, we really are only as good as the designs that are brought to us.
Exactly.
Two gentlemen that were here earlier this evening were actually hoping for some sort of design to be dropped to them so that they could find an efficiency. I don't want to have to go through making 6 more drawings because I'm drawing by hand. And they were actually hoping for some design help, and people trying as best they could to keep from saying this is what you need to put here and this is what you need to put there.
Can I just ask a hypothetical? How come it wasn't, because again, I haven't watched it, and I do intend to, asked to remove all zoning, planning, historic districts to improve the affordability housing?
The motion came from Councilor Blaylock, and it was just directed at the Historic District Commission. So the others did not come up, and so, because that was what the discussion was, so, yeah.
Anything else, Isaac? I know that you've been taking notes, but hopefully you have some bullet points.
Yes. Yep, I have like a full page and a half, so.
Okay.
I think
I guess,
We can help
just
condense that.
with the motion that's approves,
Yes.
okay, I'm just curious, like, what are the next steps to gather that data?
It's just what the Historic District Commission decides to do that. And it's really a report back from the HDC, so
Okay.
whatever the whole group thinks the report back should be.
Got it, okay.
It's not, you know, and the report back may be, we can't gather
Yeah.
the type of data that you're looking for. You might need to hire an outside consultant to do so.
I mean, I think our consensus, it seems like, is that we don't feel that the review time, the added review time of the Historic District Commission is an undue burden on any new construction that would prevent affordable housing, if that is really the concern.
In
And
fact, I
that,
think we're-
and that, you know, it would be an interesting study, but yeah, we don't have the expertise, we don't have the time to find those numbers to do that,
It's a huge number.
right, that very specific study to come up with numbers to prove or disprove this idea, but, you know, in our opinion, it's not,
I mean, I think you could craft something like that basically says, without going into the numbers, just thinking in general construction costs, the purchase of the land, the materials that have to go into building it, whether it's a 15-unit affordable housing or a 5-unit high-end luxury, the cost of spending here is not the make or break factor. And so I think just making that statement without trying to support it with numbers, because if people
Yeah.
don't get that concept, then I don't know how they're going to get it with numbers. But I do think that the information that Joy just picked up really quickly on how many times on average a residential application has to come before us and how many times a commercial application has to come for us would be interesting data points to put out there, and I think it might surprise a few people. And then we probably would have to look at pulling out a few outliers and acknowledging that there are some projects that do take a long time, but there are reasons. And that, I think, is something that could be pulled together without hiring a consultant. And that's our first response, and if the council wants more, we could talk about what that looks like.
And, well, I think the thing that could be taken from Map Geo is how many lots are there? Are we talking 15 lots total?
right,
And,
we can figure out easily what are the empty
Yeah.
lots.
right, and just quantifying that and And then, the answer is about 53% for, that. But yeah, I think the actual cost to a developer, and would they say, oh, because I'm not gonna spend $50,000.
There's a danger there,
We're all
though, Joy.
taxpayers here. I would hate for us to spend money chasing this issue.
100%. Yeah. And I don't wanna spend my time on it
No.
either, personally.
I'm just gonna say, there's one danger, Joy, in counting undeveloped lots, and Counselor, I would say this. If we look at, going down Congress Street, okay, start at, what was it, Opal and whatever, down to the jewelry store at the end. On the one hand, they're individual buildings. On the other hand, they're one commercial development project called One Congress. So do you take our review out of that? And if you take our review out of a commercial development, well then, hey, we didn't get to review that. So you can't just look at vacant lots. You have to look at how many prospective commercial developments. How many times would a developer come in and say, well, I'm gonna buy this building, I'm gonna buy that building, and I'm gonna buy the third one, we're gonna call it one commercial development. Then we're excluded by that definition.
Well, his definition was very specifically new construction on an empty lot.
Okay.
Not
Rich,
even
yeah,
that.
Rich went so far as to say when the McIntyre was brought up, that did not
Count.
Okay.
he considered that an addition.
Okay.
Because
Yeah, I
it was being
didn't get to
built
read
on
that,
a
but yeah,
lot that
okay.
already had a building on it, unless that's actually legally 2 lots, and I don't know that.
I think it's technically just one wide lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he
What if you
basically was saying
subdivide?
the McIntyre didn't fall into, and it would still be reviewed.
Yeah.
I'd still like to see the idea also that the cost of review time outweighs the public benefit.
Exactly.
And we often get accused of being in the pocket of developers. So for us to sort of just give a free pass, I mean,
Well, it goes
My
back to
goodness.
what he said. If
Right.
new projects won't be reviewed, then
Yeah.
why is there a
Yeah,
historic?
you might as well disband at that
It
point because you
actually,
can't treat the homeowner unfairly.
I think that's gonna potentially spin up a huge legal issue for the city for
Yeah.
every other resident that would be exempt from that.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I spent 4 years in law school and passed the bar. That would be a wonderful thing somebody would just, not me, but that would be a wonderful thing somebody over in Concord just love to get their hands on and run with. I mean, you can't do that.
I think that the analysis that the average time frame, especially for homeowners, is only 1 to 2 meetings, would be incredibly helpful in this sense, because there's reality and there's perception. And unfortunately, the only things that you see in the news are the exceptions. They're the things that are controversial or difficult. And so it's nice to be able to share what the reality is for the review process, so.
There's another good example, Kate. I forget the individual's name, the homeowners, but they had a single floor cape off of Maplewood on the south side of the North Mill Pond. Am I saying that right? And they wanted to, blow it up into a colonial. And it's going nicely. I mean, I go past it every day. But, they came in here, it took a couple meetings. They were gonna actually, I think, make the roof shorter, and we said, well, why don't you just make it taller and make it more, and it's beautiful. They even did the faux chimney. The whole thing looks really great so far. So they're ended up with a product that is like their net worth out of that product is gonna far exceed what they started with. And it's a beautiful job, and they're doing a fantastic job with it. I just can't remember their name, but just go past it out there on Maplewood. That's more ammunition for you.
All right. Thank you. This was a very good discussion. So, Isaac, we can work with you. You need help trying to distill all of this, but thank you for all of that. This is good. And we'll see what comes next. So, any other questions or issues or statements? All right.
Well, I guess just for clarifying purposes, we are gonna look at data to see? Decide, like,
I mean, I think that it's not really our job to look at the data.
is it Isaac's job to
We
look
can
at it?
ask Isaac to point out, to look and find just how many empty lots there are.
Okay.
Vacant lots.
That I agree with 100%.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, then,
Motion to adjourn?
thank you.
All right.
Okay.
Second.